So today's basically on shed ventilation or dairy yard ventilation with Jamie Robertson, and we're going to be hosted by Willow Tree. So the technology today, basically, you're going to have the video is going to be playing. We'll get into that when it actually does, but you will have access to control the video and move it around as you please. So if you click on the screen and move it around, but you should have control over the video as it's playing, and then we will be talking over the video at the points that we can. Okay, so I'm going to bring in Jamie Robertson and Mark Glover and Tom and Howard from Willow Tree, and hopefully Tom can tell us a little bit about the Willow Tree KPIs and how they run as a herd. Tom, are you there? Hi, Tom. You want to tell us a little bit about the
Hello. Yes. Willow Tree, I am the 5th generation here now. Started back in the early 1900s. Grandma moved on to pedigree cows, and we've sort of continued that through. So we run about nearly a 400-acre farm here, with 95 acres of maize grown, 160 acres of grass, which was done for first cut. We then put 70 acres back into maize. We have about 160 acres of wheat, and then we rent 30 acres of grazing land for the in-calf heifers. Currently milking about 250 cows, with about 30 dry. In-calf heifers about 55. So we're running at about 65 followers a year coming in. The cows have just gone over 13,000 litres on twice a day milking. In our milk per cow per day of lifetime yield is about 23.5 litres. Average over the last 12 months of milk per cow per day was just over 40 litres, as fat as 4.13 and protein at 3.35, and cell count running about 150. We run a culling rate of about 21%. Age at first calving, we're trying to serve heifers down at about 12 months old. So age at first calving now has got to 693 days, so about 23 months. And we're getting about 89% of cows as all served by 80 days calved. And with pregnancy rate of about 30% at the moment. Over the last few years, we've had a bit of a mastitis issue. It's an ongoing issue. A few years, meaning maybe the last 40 years. But we have, however, seen a bit of a decrease this last sort of 18 months. We're currently running about 40 cases per 100 cows, whereas this time last year we're up towards about 70 cases. So obviously we have done a lot of testing with that, and as some of you are aware, we've done previous meetings along mastitis. We've found that it's mainly environmental and lactation mastitis. It's sort of changed. You'll see with the clips we've got, the buildings. We are now obviously looking at the ventilation. We do have a little bit of issues with grouping. Now we've opened the sheds up. Again, you'll see it a bit later on. But yeah, that's pretty much sums us up.
I should mention that Mark Glover, your vet, is sitting next to you, and that he'll be participating in today as well. And that if you have any questions, please type them in the question box, and it is anonymous, so then they will be relayed and we will ask the questions as we go along. So please feel free to ask questions at any time. Jamie, how are you? Do you want to come and introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, hello, Alan. Yeah,
can you turn your video on as well, please?
Righty-ho. You don't want to see my mug, but here we go. Yeah, so yeah, delighted to meet Howard and Tom. This is especially in this particular area. you know, some people might know me as you ranting on about young stock, but I like cows of all shapes and sizes, and being involved in something like that is part that, you know, I consider the good side of my job, doing research on animal health. And there's a whole bunch of things here that I think are really nice to be able to show other people. And I think that the management of high yielding cows in 365 days a year is something that is relatively new to the industry. There's a bunch of predictable problems, and what they have at Willow Tree Farm is not only they've got some fine cows, but there's a lot of common sense been running around in here, and it's very interesting to me. So, you know, it's a very good example of what people can do, you know, to get on top of the problem. So, you know, I'm just you ready to get on with it, really, Alan?
Yep, no, that's fine. Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to transition to the video basically relatively now, if that's okay. I will just reiterate one more time that if you happen to accidentally pause it, then you will have to leave and come back in to get synced up again. So try not to pause it, but please do look around the shed so you can grab the screen and move it around, and you'll have control of where you're looking. So as we're talking, the first little bit's an introduction, so we won't be talking at first, but as Jamie's talking throughout the video, please look around and ask questions about the actual shed. The best way I could see of actually giving the visualization of how this shed is set up was this 360 tour. So go ahead, Emily, if you don't mind, if you could play, that would be great. So right now we've done a few smoke bombs around the farm. Jamie, do you want to give a wee explanation of what the smoke bombs are? We've only got a couple of minutes of it, but
yeah, what we have is you can use smoke pellets. You get them from Plum Centre or something like that. Something you can very much do yourself. And as Alan was saying, move your screen around with your hand, and you can see where all the smoke's going.
I mean, if it's still around in 2 or 3 minutes, then there's something, there's a lack of.
Yeah, so the comment I'm making there is that the good thing about this using a bit of smoke, if it disappears at 100 miles an hour, you've got too much airspeed, which might be fine in the summer, but isn't good for the winter. You know, we've got good air movement here.
Hello, my name is McFadzean, Dairy Knowledge Exchange Manager for the North of England for AHDB. I'm with one of my strategic farms. Could you guys introduce yourselves?
Right, I'm Howard Pattison. I've been here for, well, my entire life, just over 60 years. I farm here with my son, my wife and my son, and we run a high production Holstein herd, and we have done for the last, well, 50 years.
Mark, could you just tell us a little bit about your role with Willow Tree?
Yes, my name is Mark Glover, and I've been Howard and Tom's vet now for just over 40 years. And I've learned a lot from working here and seen all the changes that take place and the huge increase in production that's taken place over that time, whilst at the same time maintaining cow health and welfare.
Can you give us a rough idea of what kind of increases you've had in that time period?
I think when I first started 40 years ago, there were maybe 70 or 80 cows, giving probably 6,500 kilos, and now there are getting on for 300 cows, producing over 13,000 kilos, and still with good fertility and low disease.
That's incredible. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about Willow Tree and what?
Yes, so I'm Tom Pattison. So I've been full-time here now for 15 years since leaving school. It was a case of either going away to university or coming home and growing the business, which is exactly what we did. We added on a couple new sheds, made a new dry cow shed, and then obviously everything's gone towards the health and welfare of the cows. Then in 2022, we were introduced, became part of the strategic dairy farm for AHDB, which has opened up a few new sort of
windows and opportunities to get involved with different experts within the business and drive the setup forward a bit further.
Right. I hope you can hear that over some of the noisier cows. But Jamie, I'm kind of hoping you can come in and give us a bit about the maths and the science behind this.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I'll skip right past is that because it's not for today, but nutrition, of course, is one aspect of having healthy cows, and also in hot weather. That actually nutrition has a place to play, but we're not going to talk about that today. But yeah, so I was, Alan sent me some information about this, and I spoke with Howard and Tom, and we had Teams meetings, and the first thing that is apparent to probably all of us is that, and what's interesting here is that Howard and Tom had actually sort of been advised to sort of allow the cows to sort of circulate in one big group, and in warm weather, the grouping of cows in certain parts of the shed became self-evident. And I would say that to everybody. I mean, it actually doesn't matter what species you're dealing with, but the cow is, in this case, such a good monitor, and most of you will. You'll notice the differences, areas of cubicles where cows lie down or they don't lie down, different places at different times of the year, and that's they are the most sensitive sensor you can possibly have. So if we can understand why they move around, that's all good. And there was an area of the building here which Howard and Tom had told us about, that it wasn't immediately logical as to why the cows, for example, were moving away from the south long side of the shed, which has basically got spaceboard all the way along it, and instinctively you'd think that it was a good place for cows to go and stand, but they weren't. And in reality, what the cows will be doing, if they're allowed to move around, as they're trying to dump heat. They're producing, you imagine how much energy a 13,000 litre cow is producing, and then a group of them. And they, as the ambient temperature goes up, finally we've got rid of the horrible winter of 2024. That obviously, as the air gets warmer, it gets harder for the cows to dump the metabolic heat from all the feed that we give them, and they will try and find any incremental difference that allows them to lose more energy. The obvious one is a draft, and as we wander around, and unless you're walking around in just a pair of shorts on and what I would call tops off, the cows, they will find the merest increase in airspeed to help them lose temperature. So that to me is an indicator of an area of the shed that is just marginally better ventilated than others. The other thing that cows will tend to do is, if it's available, they'll stand around in damp spots, because sometimes the ability to lose energy, standing around in wet bits of floor kind of helps as well. So anyway, so off we go. What are we looking for? And in here, you look around on the screen, as Alan said. Now, the first thing is, if you look all the way around the building, you'll see that basically it's two very large roofs, and hardly any sidewall. We've got competition with the go. Hardly any sidewall, and it's also got a slotted roof. So it'd be hard to imagine. And there we have one end of the building. Remind me, Howard, is that east facing, isn't it?
That'll be the east, yes.
Yeah, that's an east facing. So you've got all this inlet all the way around the building, yet the cows are grouping in certain areas, and it's to me that's fascinating when trying to understand what's going on here. So it's not immediately obvious. So this is to the east, and the positive thing about this is that we do get easterly winds. They tend to be in the winter, and they can be pretty vicious and cold. But if you have a big overhang like this is here, then the wind-driven cold rain, etc., they won't be piling and having much negative impact on the building, and it's a good area. Obviously, there's no hindrance of air inlet here. If you turn around and have a look, sort of back in the building, the slotted roof. The slotted roof again. I'm quite happy that we do new builds with slotted roofs in up to 55-inch rainfall areas. And yes, of course, you have a hole in the roof. There will be a bit of rain on the cubicle beds at times. But my experience is, especially in Wales, is that you're talking about maybe 3 or 4 days a year with the slotted roof where you might feel a need to put additional material onto the bed to dry them up. But the great thing about the slotted roof, and I'm looking at this building here, is that obviously hot air can get out all over the roof. And again, so that's what's interesting to me about this location here, with Howard and Tom, is that it's very hard to imagine that the building could be improved in terms of ventilation. It's got an exhaust over the whole area of the roof and 4 open sides. What could go wrong? Well, the cows, that's the deal here, isn't it? The cows are telling us that there's areas where they prefer to go and stand. And one of the big deals here, not my suggestion, I didn't, but it's certainly what I would support, but we'll see it at some point in the video, is that the south, so we're now looking sort of down the building towards the west, so that's where the wind will be coming from for 2/3 of the year. That's the same all around Britain. But the south side, which we'll see later, has actually got spaceboard on it, and the spaceboard is not Yorkshire board. And the dairy industry, you must get your head around this, because the suggestion from the Pattisons was that actually some of these boards should be removed. Because they go from the floor to the eaves height, and you can see it's quite a tall eaves height, and you sort of go, well, we've got inlet all the way down that sidewall, but actually, having done the calculations, they're quite right that the spaceboard was restrictive on air inlet on the south side. Now, how did we work all these things out? Well, there's a simple way, and then there's the more nuanced way. But the first thing is, what you're looking for adult cattle is 0.1 square meter of hole in the roof, and for high yielding cattle, twice as much in the sidewall. Can you still hear me? My sound's gone down.
Yep. Sorry, I think.
Okay.
Muted the sound.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So there you go. We've got 250 cows under these sort of collection roofs. So as a ballpark figure, you need 250 times 0.1 square meters of hole in the roof. Easy. I need 250 square meters of hole in the roof, and you need a tape measure and a bit of common sense and a back of a fag packet, and you work the numbers out. We've got all these holes. A slotted roof will have a slot every meter, every sheet. The building's 60 meters long. I've got 59 sheets. I've got 59 holes. How wide's the building? It's you just keep doing the numbers. And one of the things about this, you do the numbers on this building, the roof, there is no impediment to adequate airflow out to the roof. If I need 250 times 0.1 is 25 square meters, of hole in the roof. High yielding cows, I need twice as much in each sidewall. And this is all in the AHDB booklet about cattle ventilation, but it means it's something you can do yourself. I need 25 square meters of hole in the roof. High yielding cows, I need twice as much in each sidewall. So I need 50 square meters in each sidewall. And actually, when I did the maths on the spaceboard, which we'll see at some point, actually, it was a bit restrictive. And of course, in the summertime, then the sun, will be spending quite a lot of time beating down on that south-facing wall, and actually the cows don't want to go there. It looks as if it's a place they would want to be, but in reality, they were wanting to go anywhere in the shed where they could pick up a little bit of air movement, and really that's what they're doing. And so I have to stress time and time again that maybe not for 6,000 litre cows, but 6,000 litre cows aren't going to be housed in the summer anyway, are they? So what we're looking for is all of you with cattle inside in the summer, and this goes the same for beef as well. If you've got high yielding beef cattle in the summer, they will be desperate to dump heat and getting the building to work properly is what we're after. So cow behavior to me is the #1 guide. After that, the cows will look for air movement, and water troughs incredibly important. I think this is an area again where there's low-hanging fruit here. Funny enough, when our cows get hot, they want to drink a lot more water. Yes, so water quality, access to the water, flow rates in the troughs are all important, because these girls will double their water intake if they can, and so this is a no-brainer. Children can understand that actually if cows get hot, they want to drink more water, but we need to be able to get it to them. And I think it's another area whereby, if the water's pretty rank, the pipe work hasn't been cleaned for 27 years, when it's got sort of frogs doing the backstroke in it, don't be surprised what happens. The cows will drink a certain amount, but they won't drink as much as they want, and therefore they will end up not eating as much as you would like them to either. So water quality, water access, all very important here. So I think on the whole, so we move around a bit. What have we got? A few more minutes, haven't we?
Yep.
I'm just
moving
the screen.
So, Tom,
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Tom, somebody's asked if the cows have access to enough here.
Alan, the video's a little bit deceptive in that there looks to be an awful lot more inlet than there actually is in real life. The walls just do not look as transparent as they do on the video.
Obviously, with the light coming through, it will look a certain way.
Yeah. So see, right now we're on 15 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, just scroll round and find that passageway which has got the spaceport on it, and you'll see it's from floor to ceiling.
This is south facing.
Yeah. That's the south. That's the inside. That's the south facing area that you would instinctively think the cows would. It looks nice and open. As Mark was saying, that it's very deceptive. It looks like there's lots of big gaps there, but no. The only tool you need is a tape measure. Don't guess. You just measure. You measure the height of the board, and it's say 150 mil, a 6-inch board. It might have a 20 mil gap. So the proportion, so 20 mil of every 170 mil is a gap. And you could just work it all out. And what the suggestion was is that you maybe could take that out, and we'll come on to it later. But ultimately, the idea is that we start taking planks and boards off. My comment generally, Alan, about that is that it's nice in the summer, but if you start leaving big gaps around the building, you must be able to manage the fact that you will get a lot more wind and rain coming through the building, but actually here it's not going to do too much damage. The reason being, it's south facing. The wind doesn't come from the south that often. When it does, it's probably the summer. And actually, if a bit of rain, you can see from I've got it fixed here for me on that wall, but you can see even if the rain does come in, get blown by the wind 20 foot into the shed, there's no cubicles to get damp. You might get a bit of wet feed. Well, it's wet in the first place. So here you could get away, as we decided to take every other board off and fix it on the inside as a kind of a low-cost substitute for Yorkshire board. Making it work well. But I think it's to me overall very interesting that when you say it's deceptive, Mark, there is actually quite a lot of inlet on these buildings compared to what I'll see in quite a lot of buildings. So yeah.
But I still think it looks from that picture that there's more inlet there than there actually is.
And that's exactly. I mean, sorry. Yeah, I beg your pardon.
And from the picture, I don't think it's easy to appreciate if we take alternate boards off and reattach them to the inside of the horizontal woods. how much that will increase the inlet area.
Yeah,
It'll
but you can do it. So absolutely right. So this is why we really need to impress upon the industry the value of Yorkshire board. So a space board, as I said, it will be 150 mil board and maybe a 20 mil gap, and that leaves you, that's about 12% of the area as a whole. And as Mark just said, if you take every other 150 mil board out, then you start with, now you have a 170 mil gap, between two adjacent boards. So if you just pause that a second. So it's very much the solution that they came up with, I think, is a very practical one. But I do think for people running with problems with not enough inlet air for high yielding cows, or the side of a building which is maybe on the windward side, and there's another 2 buildings next to it, you need the air in there as massively. So Yorkshire board done typically, and again it's outlined in the HD booklet, but you will double the inlet area, which has a massive impact on air quality and air movement.
Well, while we've got it paused, can I just jump in with a couple of questions? So I've had a question towards Tom. They're just asking about the access the cows have to the loafing space and how much area that. Could you give us a little bit on that, Tom?
I think there is a video later on. There is actually, of the cows going out before the milking. So the loafing area is sort of on the east side of the building that we opened out.
It's in the middle, really.
Yeah, and that's the space where the cows can move freely between the 4 sheds.
Yep.
And I can't remember exactly the figures, how much extra space we had now. I don't know if you.
I can't remember that number.
I think it was an increase of 2.6 meters per animal, if I recall correctly. But
it's somewhere around. I was going to say about 2 meters, but yeah.
There was a big increase in collecting yard, wasn't there?
Yeah. But I think I said later on there is a video in that collecting area, that end of the in the yard.
Jamie, do the rules on the inlet and outlet requirements remain the same when you see multi-span buildings such as these? For example, the centre of the 3 sheds has no sides which are outside, and air does not move across as effectively.
So there's certain things we cannot change. So let's say with 3 identical buildings attached to each other, that the one in the middle doesn't have any access to the clean outside air. The most important thing to do and is to remember that most of the ventilation of our naturally ventilated buildings is driven by the wind. So the most important thing, if you like, so if you get these 3 buildings stacked together, the most important wall on that building is the one facing the prevailing wind. You need to get as much air through there, doing as little damage as possible, because you need the air to go through all 3 sheds at ground level, which it will do most of the time. So what you would tend to do, the first thing, Alan, so each roof, let's say there's 3, each roof needs, if there's 100 cows under each roof, then each roof needs to be 100 times 0.1 approximately, as I said, the ballpark, so it needs 10 square meters of hole in each roof, because that will let warm air escape. But the wind-driven ventilation, if you think about it, that if the wind's just moving at a walking pace, a couple of meters a second, and even if you have a building that's those 3 buildings, if they're 30 meters wide each, and that's 90, let's say 100 meters to go across the building. But if the air can get in one side and out the other at walking speed, you've cleaned the air in that building every 50 seconds, yeah? So, and the same with the gable ends. Now, one of the things, great potential for the industry is quite a lot of older buildings, if the gable ends are facing the prevailing wind directions to the southwest, because that's what people, because they would protect the building. So they stick the building, and it's got solid sheeting. Well, actually, that solid sheeting needs to be got rid of, and you put Yorkshire board up, because then I go from having no wind-driven ventilation. It will pour around the sides of the building and eventually get in, but you want the wind to do your ventilation. So it's really a matter of to finish answering your question. So the calculation is you would have, let us say, approximately 10 square meters in each ridge, and then you say, okay, on that sidewall, I am ventilating for. If it was just a building on its own, I'm looking for twice what's going out through the roof, so that's twice 10, which is 20 square meters of inlet area. I go, that's fine. I'll go for that as a minimum. But then the trouble is, if you make too much opening, on the side that gets 2/3 of the weather, including all the way through the winter, you've got to be able to keep a control of the water getting in on the beds and everything. So Yorkshire board is the answer, or curtains. And you'll get, I'm going to talk about that in a bit later, but payback on investment. So the roof is the most important bit of the central building, and I'll see that again with all the buildings, because if you get a decent aperture in the roof, up stands either side of the gap, then the wind going over the top of the three buildings, three roofs, will suck the air out through a protected open ridge, and that keeps the air moving in, extracted from all three sheds, even though they're adjacent to each other. Is that going to make sense?
Yes. We're going to go ahead and let the video play on a little bit, because we give a little bit of a description as to why we wanted to bring Jamie to the farm and stuff in the actual video. So I'm going to let that play, if that's okay with everybody. Unless, Mark, you looked like you had a question. Did you want to? You're muted, sorry.
I was just going to say that when the video plays again and you show the smoke bombs, it was very interesting when the floor of this shed the concrete was being grooved. Obviously, there were huge clouds of dust forming as the grooving was done, and it was amazing to see that dust disappear out through the roof at great speed. So we know that the roof enables a really good stack effect, and it must sort of draw the fresh air towards the centre of the shed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we definitely got that from the smoke bombs as well, right enough.
Yeah, you could see it going up through the roof when yeah.
Okay, Emily, would you mind just playing, and we'll let it play on for a little bit longer?
Hello, my name is McFadzean, Dairy and Oilseeds Manager for the North of England. Today we're at Willow Tree with Howard and Tom. We're going to be working on ventilation with Jamie Robertson, and I was hoping you could give us an idea of why you want to work in the ventilation in the farm.
During working with the AHDB, being the strategic dairy farm over the last few years, our main aim to start with was working on mastitis, reducing the case of first mastitis, and within getting some expertise advice, we opened up the buildings. The cows now are all grouped together in 12 sheds. We have noticed over the last few years that the grouping has become a little bit of a problem, especially in the summer, hot days. Cows sort of like different areas of the sheds, and so we've sort of got Jamie on farm to have a look and see if you can shed any light onto how we can improve the ventilation. If it's the ventilation that's causing us problems.
Mark, do you see any ways we could future-proof the shed to help the herd health?
Yes, well, we have in our thoughts and about what to do, wonder about increasing inlets for the fresh air shed. Talk about the very hot days in the summer when temperature are very high.
Yep. Jamie, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think this is overall a really good shed. It is a good shed, but there's a lot going on in here. You've got fantastic cows, a huge yield going on, and so the energy, and moisture going through this building is just phenomenal. And so the first thing is I'm always interested in what the cows have been telling you and what it is about them. They choose particular points different times of the year on with different conditions, but you're not sure what the link is. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So I think going back to basics, we're looking, the first thing to get really clear in our head, the ventilation is actually mostly wind driven in our naturally ventilated buildings. So whilst we can get very sexy about the numbers on stack effect, that comes later. And when I look at the buildings here, as you look around, actually, whilst it is a cluster, which is very typical, a building next to building next to building, what your industry does, that they're pretty good in that the air can get in from all the way around. So that's the second place I would always go looking, is sight and wind direction. First thing is the wind comes from every point of the compass, so we can be, however, quite predictable that direction is the west. And for most cattle buildings in the whole of Britain and Ireland, then more than half your weather comes from that direction. Now, if you're sat down in a hollow or there's a whole load of silage pits, then something different's going to be going on. I'm just going to keep an eye on that helmet. No worries. But here, it's a superb location because the wind can get at these buildings all the way. And you can see come the winter, there's not a lot of protection and it'll be pretty leery in here. So one of the things we discussed, Jess, if we look over that back wall, is whether that's an area we could get more air in. Ventilation's all about in and out. You've got to have both. So what we're actually going to do is move to the next stage, because I think the problem with opening buildings up, maybe completely taking cladding off, is that's going to be great in the summer. But come October, November, December, you could end up like over here. You would easily have rainfall on these beds, even though they're nearly 20 feet away from the sidewalk. You don't want that. And so I think the first thing is the mass. It's in the AHDB guidance notes, but we can do simple calculations to say whether there's enough in area in that sidewall to let the air in if it needs to. So we can do that. So what thoughts have you had about opening up a building and trying to get a more even distribution with the cattle?
Well, we've noticed the cows in the far sheds, to the south facing shed, they migrate even today, which is, 14 degrees tops. There's more cows in this shed where we're stood than there is over there. So that even on a coolish day, they've migrated. And we're not sure why, but we're thinking about taking every other Yorkshire boarding off and actually putting our space boarding off and putting it on the inside, so we actually double or more than double the intake of air. Do you think that would be the right thing to do?
It's possible in some situations it might be the right thing to do, to go from spaceport to Yorkshire, or where you have the two lines of board, massively increasing in that area. Definitely a good idea. But before we do that, we would do fairly simple calculations. So I would sort of say here that we've got 8 bays, there's 54 metres of length. We've got to have at least 4 metre high of board. So 4 times 54 is 266 metres. Well, if 10% of that was a hole, which it is, then we've got 20 square metres of inlet. How much do we need? And the answer as a ballpark, well, we need at least 0.1 square metre per cow. How many cows in here?
If the holes?
No, just this side.
Just this side.
Probably 150 or so?
No, there'd be more. 68 3 times.
About 200. 200. So we've got about 200 cows. We need a minimum of 0.1 square metre each. There's 20 square metres needed. We've got it. So from one side.
You know, and that's, well, I need that on one side. I need the same on this side. So we're about, but that isn't to say that, okay, we could, if you took it away completely, there would be times of the year in the summer when a small breeze will be beneficial compared to restricting it the way it is. The problem is, what are you going to do in February?
But if you take it all off in summer, what happens to the sunshine that comes in? Does that not have a detrimental effect?
It certainly will if it goes on to cows. So over that side,
south
facing, it absolutely would have a bit in it. Yeah. So we've got, it's the same wherever we are. We have this sort of our maritime climate, cold, wet winters, warmer and warmer summers. But you bring out the point about resilience and the future. I think that's where I would think we go before you chop up any.
Yeah.
We'll do the maths and see how far short we are ideal on the natural ventilation. Because if we look up, you know, it's a clean roof on the inside, which suggests it's ventilating pretty well. From what you told me as well, you know, when people have been working in here, cutting grooves in the floor, you know, the dust goes out quite cleanly. But again, I think for all of us, they'll take measure on, again, we can do the same thing. If it's 54 metres long, it's got 53 gaps, slots in the roof. Each one of them is X metres long. You do the maths, you work out how close is the accumulated outlet in the roof to what we need. And after that, you can sort of say, right, if the inlet and outlet areas are where they should be, what else can be done to future? Because if it gets hotter and hotter, you can't expect the building cannot make itself pure. Not possible.
It goes up to capacity of in and out without dragging any more air in, forcing it.
Yeah. But again, you will find that in that there are certain things that would make the building hotter than it needs to be, which is not the case here. Like skylights, you know, the slots are good because they don't let in a lot of radiant energy from the sun, you know.
And I must admit, that roof is 25-year-old somewhere in there. That you do look up, it looks new.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah. Jamie, as we wander around, or as people get to wander around, what would you suggest we look for in the shed to kind of indicate how to change things?
Well, the first thing we've mentioned repeatedly now is cow behaviour. Yeah, best sensor, the best sensor you can have, and that this business about 7 times of the year they're one place and other times of the year somewhere different. That's key. The fact that I don't understand it, you're not giving you the answer.
We've only found that out the last few years. Obviously, certainly not last year, the year before in 2022 with that really hot summer. But previously, we've not noticed it because we've had cows fastened up in individual sheds. Now we've let them out so they can move around. They're now telling us that which are their preferred places.
And they will, as you know, especially in the summer temperatures, the cows they'll move to find the smallest difference in airspeed. Again, this is something most stock people would recognise. Here they go up to one end of the shed, the other end of the shed. So what that's telling you is that once the temperature gets to sort of 15, 16, 17 degrees centigrade, then the cow is hot. The building is going to be hot inside, hot outside, hot in a good building, hot in a bad building. Doesn't make any difference. What they're looking for is air movement. And you get to the point whereby, and I'm thinking here, this is a well-exposed site, cleanly exposed. We check stuff before we start putting walls off, but it might be, if it's got as good as it's going to get, the only way you're going to get consistent conditioning around the whole buildings in hot weather is to move air, get fans, which is a cost and a run, but it might be worthwhile. The other thing in terms of sort of general you're asking is, so roof lights, they can just seriously don't need them on south facing you. You don't need much of them. There was a trend where, in terms of animal welfare, it's considered a good idea. So quite a number of buildings built maybe 20 years ago, too many roof lights, paint them out safely. Use a cherry picker, put in out water-based paint. If you want light, turn the lights on. The other thing is access to water. Certainly here, but have a look in the way around. You've got clean water in clean source. Fantastic. I'm sorry I go to too many places where that's not the case. But of course, if an animal's getting hot, it wants to drink. So you need good access, no restriction, and no competition. Well, it's amazing how many places you look at a water top, when they come out of the parlour twice a day, and I've got half the cows have been through, the top's empty. It doesn't fill fast enough. So that, and the other thing is the floor. Obviously, animals will tend to accumulate sometimes because there's a lot of water lying around in hot weather. There's water it's cooling in the summer.
Because we talked about making a lot of minor changes that might add up to the overall good. And what would you suggest about taking some of the panels out of this eastern aspect of the shed, make it all easily open along there?
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that there is quite a canopy at the other side giving bird breeze protection.
I think this is great, this bit at the end here. So, when you're already doing a pretty good job, I'll take the 1% and another 1%. So, yeah. On the basis that wind-driven ventilation is what we're after, but when there's no wind, it's all to do with that. But everything that gets in the way of impeding airflow, so the other side of any barrier like that, there'll be an area of reduced airspeed and reduced air movement. And that, again, this is something you can look, you come into this coming summer, is to sort of think that whether the extent some of these areas of cladding below eaves height, do I need it? If I can't see a benefit of it, take it out. Make a barbecue.
And do you think there'd be any detriment in winter? You're moving the boarding that's below the...
Not so much this side when there's a lean-to.
Well, I think it's a very, very interesting point. If there was no lean-to on that, I would leave them exactly where they are. In about 7 days' time, we're in March, by the way. We're going to beast from the east is going to arrive, and that is protecting to a certain extent these cubicles. But it has that subtle effect. Yeah. So I would be, if it wasn't for the lean-to, I'd be taking them where they are. Absolutely.
Would you take the top bit off, the not below the eave, but actually not all the way down to the bottom,
the level of the canopy?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we go ventilation being mostly wind-driven, let's go at least 90% of the year. 2/3 of it is coming from that direction. So it's kind of like, as long as it can get out, we have plenty of out. Yeah. So that is not going to influence what comes in. Whereas, we'll go to other buildings, and it's about the blocks and it's a bit wall. Yeah. So we get in and get out, that's through that way. So you don't need to touch any of that, you've plenty of out. Flip it on its head and say, well, it's maybe 5% of the year it's going to come that way. Most of that in the winter, I believe it where it's because it's at that point, again, if you have, which we will get a week in late winter coming from the Ural Mountains over there, you can't see them quite in this camera, but you can't see them. But when it comes, there will be a drop in yield. And that's a percentage you don't. So I'd leave that alone. But if we go the other way, then there's a couple of areas inside that house where I would certainly say just to take it out. I cannot see a disbenefit of taking it out.
So you take up the boarding there, it's like the middle of the shed, if you like.
Yeah.
The bottom end of this shed, below the eaves.
Hicks, I would.
right all along, right in the bottom.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because everything, it's, you know, the wind movement is easier to understand when there's plenty of wind about, you know, because you can feel it. I think what you're seeing with your cows, with so much energy that they're trying to get rid of, that they're moving around trying to find a marginal increase in their speed. That's all what's going on. And even though you say quite rightly, it's not warm, but these cows are producing a lot of heat. But they can find a way of getting rid of it, they will. You know, and I think that it's quite interesting. I mean, I'm getting the results there.
There's a book breeze coming from the west. Yeah. Now we've moved up to the east end of the shed. You get the breeze from the east. How does that work?
It's actually quite still outside if you watch sack effect.
Well, yeah. See, that comes back to the inlet and outlet. If as the wind speed slows down, the impact of stack effect takes over. It's not like the stack effect does nothing until the wind stops completely. Especially when you've got this much heat in this book. Irrelevant for carp housings. And in the year, we're going, you know, as you see, we've got 100 kilowatts almost, which is influencing air temperature, hot air rises. You've got radiant distribution holes, and you can't get any better than this, actually. But we're in a relatively done for with rainfall area, so we can get away with it. But this will be drawing the air in and up, and we're standing on the inlet, the impact. So it really is pretty good. And you can imagine that as it gets hotter, then the impact of the space bit behind you there, it will be slowing down that natural inlet. It will, because it's got to suck it like through a sieve. Whereas here, there's no sieve.
Right.
It's just straight in.
And if it's a cow that gives 6,000 litres, as opposed to a cow that gives 12,000 litres, are the same? Are the inlet areas the same and the outlet areas the same?
It must produce vastly different amounts of energy.
There is a big difference to entire and moisture. See, that's the other thing that I think that we're working out. The industry's waking up to. We can have hot cows in a climate that's not particularly hot. It's because it's temperature and humidity. These girls are drinking 120, 130 litres of water a day. The 6,000 litre cow, half that. So automatically, we have half, or if you like, whichever way you look at it, we have twice as much moisture in this building per cow than a grass-fed, weaned Jersey or something. And so the dynamics are different. But on the mat, don't overcomplicate it. We keep the numbers where they are. We maybe have to revise them in your case upwards, because we would say the same on the inlet areas on the mats. These cattle they don't need 20 square meters in the sidewall. They maybe need 30 or 40. We'll do the mats on that check.
And bearing in mind, we leave the inlet area 10 years time, 20 years time, not just tonight.
But you do need to accept that if you have no restriction on inlets and it's 18 degrees centigrade, the only way you're going to keep yourselves comfortable and not all bunched in one corner where the wind's been bumped or the low wind speed is fan. And then it's a matter of cost effectiveness
for that few days.
And you absolutely do that. You go, well, it's all cost supply figure some to put fans into this around the building. How many days a year will it have the opportunity of giving more return on that investment? So you're measuring, which is what you're going to do, isn't it?
Yes, we can monitor respiratory rates.
But you have to monitor the temperature and humidity, and that will give us more of a objective view of how many days, hours a year that elaborate investment could give a return. Because it's not what you don't do. You just have hot cows for.
And make the best of what we've got.
Yes, definitely.
Just briefly, is that okay?
Yeah, Emily, can you pause it? You want it? Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. Just to, I realise you can overcomplicate things. One thing that did come out of all this, I just need to iterate, listening to myself chatting away there, is that we're sort of saying, well, that sidewall, we sort of looked at it and it was about 20 square meters of actual inlet, and it's about 20 square meters that we need, but note for a minimum. So I didn't come back clearly in answer to Mark's question there. So the one thing would be is that for a 6,000 litre cow or younger stock or something, I'm quite happy that the sidewall, I say nothing to do with what I'm happy with, but the reality is that, you know, if you need 20 square meters of hole in the roof, you need a minimum of 20 square meters of inlet down the sidewall. One of the things that is absolutely clear is that if you're looking for higher levels of productivity, as the Pattisons have already got, then basically no trouble at all with the idea that you would double the inlet area. So those are the ballpark figures, that the minimum inlet area, so for young stock, for dry cows, basically whether you don't have the same metabolic parameters, then you basically, if I need 20 square meters hole in the roof, I need 20 square meters in the sidewall. But for these cows, I would double it, and that's what we ended up doing. So if you just pump ahead there, Emily, that'd be grand.
You mentioned stack effect, Jamie. Could you give a little bit more of an explanation as to what that is and how you know if it's working correctly in the shed? Go ahead and play, Emily.
Yeah. So as far as the stack effect's concerned, it's the heat from the cows, and yeah, if it's a windy day, we don't need to worry about it. The ventilation, the heat, the moisture's kept moving. That's what ventilation is good at. But as the airspeed slows down, or as we've spoken before, as a building next to another building or a silage pit, basically, it's easy to understand. If the air movement slows down, the air temperature will probably go up. Now, hot air rises. It's very simple. If you have an adequate amount of hole in the roof, then the hot air will go through the roof, and in terms of animal health, it will take with it moisture, and it will take with it viruses, bacteria, and for every cubic meter that goes through the roof, another cubic meter has to enter the building from somewhere else. And that's kind of how it all works. My boss, Dr. Jim Bruce, is the guy that worked it all out. But at some point, I'd love to visualize it, but just look at this here. If these buildings, if they need 20 to 25 square meters of hole in the roof, the stack effect, it will be going through that hole in the roof at 3 meters per second. So that means you will have 60 to 75 cubic meters per second going out through the roof. That's the same volume as a 40-foot container on the back of an Arctic.
Yep.
And I think if AHDB could visualize that with their graphic skills, I'd love to see it. But the point is, the volumes are massive, and it's driven by the stack effect. And the one place you don't need to worry about holes in the roof is the collecting yard, which we're seeing here. And Howard mentioned it earlier, that it's a loafing area. But do remember that making a hole in the collecting yard and the rain coming in is not a problem. It's the most highly energy stocked area of every cattle farm is the collecting yard. Your sickest cows will be there the longest, the lame cows, they'll be hanging around in the back, and it's highly energy dense. Make a hole in the roof. If the rain comes through the hole, it's landing on a concrete floor. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. We move on to the parlour. And I tell you what I saw here that I really liked. I mean, I'm not a fan of big black and white cows. I'm an old guy, and I remember the sort of highly genetic, these things would be flying all over the place and falling over and hurting their legs and whatever. These cows are just a credit to the family. They really are. These cows pretty relaxed. The thing I noticed here, Alan, you in this video, see how clean the cows' feet are. And that's something I would automatically do. Part of my work is, I'm looking around, I'm looking at the cow behavior, but it doesn't lie. All these cows, their feet are so clean.
Incredibly clean.
they're really good. So that tells me that it's an area whereby if you're running a mastitis problem, it's not because there's dubs, there's shan being picked up and thrown above the hock height. I'm interested in dirt above hock height, and obviously the amount of dirt that will be dragged onto the bed. So, when I saw this video here, I thought it's remarkable. These big cows, they're producing a lot of feces, obviously, but my God, they're clean, and they're really steady the way they're moved about, and they're a great credit to the family. These cows working like this. Moving on again, I would sort of say that the parlour, something I stayed away from. It's a complex area. I'm not an expert, but I'll come back again. That they're hot in the summer and cold in the winter. And I'm sort of going, as an industry, you really need to smarten up on that, because you get this stuff called insulation. And insulation is good at keeping stuff cool in hot weather and warm in cold weather. But it is another area that we need to pay attention. These cows get too hot, and as has been stated before, we're talking about 15, 16 degrees centigrade. And a damp environment, these cows are starting to suffer physiological stress. And before you see yield loss, you'll be getting fertility problems anyway. And so this is an area whereby perhaps you, as quite a few people in the industry already do, you mentioned earlier, a bit of air movement, some small fans, people put them into these areas to keep the flies under control, whatever. But I certainly think that this area, look at all the roof lights. I'm sort of going, well, actually, I'd be tempted to paint them out. That's you've got light bulbs for when it gets dark. I would be looking at anything you can to get the energy flows, if you like, under control. But very good. I think it's great. I think the way to see you watching the way these cows behave is just fabulous. As I said, go for it, Alan.
So I was just going to ask Tom, can you come in and talk about the changes you're actually thinking of making after this, after we've been there?
So yeah, the changes within the actual sheds. As we've discussed previously, and when Jamie was there about moving the space boardings, obviously I know we briefly talked about fans, but it's a cost, and is it really a cost we would get the benefit from? The easiest option to start with obviously is moving the space boardings, and I don't know if it was mentioned, but the actual wooden purlins that the boarding's boarded onto is a 7-inch gap. So it's a case of, is moving every other board 7 inches in over too big a gap, or is that adequate enough and would stop sort of a lot of the winter weather affecting the cows? Obviously in summer it would be fine. Even with the sun, it is on a feed passage, so it's not going to affect the cows directly. Then also when we were stood at the east side of the shed around the camera, taking the boards off sort of below the eaves or below that canopy on the outside, that would let air in and also out of the east side.
We were also going to move some boards at the west side as well, below the canopy, to increase the inlet adjacent to the collecting yard.
Yep. I had one more question, Jamie, before I let you go on a little bit longer. Just for clarity, are we saying we need 0.1 squared per cow air inlet in the shed from the side where the wind is coming in, i.e. overall we might need 0.4 squared across all the sides?
Let's go. You start with how much you need in the roof, right? And that will give us a number. Yeah, so 183 cows, we need 180 times 0.1 square meter of outlet in the roof. Yeah, so that'll be 18.3 or whatever. Let's stick with our 20 square meters, a hole in the roof. I want a minimum of the same number in each sidewall. Each sidewall, right?
Yep.
Twice as much when I've got cattle like this. So I need 40 square meters in each sidewall. And that was very much the case that supported, you know, what Howard and Tom and Mark had come up with. The fact is, and that's the good one, is that these are ballpark figures, by the way, Alan. Let's remember this. This is something, it's an easy way to, when you actually do the calculations, which are in the AHDB booklet, the numbers will be less than that, okay? But I did the numbers and it sticks fine. You know, but the point is they needed approximately 20 square meters at a minimum, but actually they needed 40 because they're high yielding cows. When you measured it, they only had 20. So moving the boards was absolutely a good idea. And the only question is, which Howard has just mentioned, is that, well, will the gaps be too big come the winter? And I think the feeling was it's got to be worth giving it a go.
Mark, what's your thoughts? Are you happy with?
Yes. Yeah. I say yes. We're going to get on and make a few alterations shortly before the hot weather comes, if it comes.
If it ever comes.
Yeah. I like this one in this image here. You know, we're getting towards the end here. There was a brief look at the calf building. You know, as a couple of things there. Well, I noticed that you know, we go on to that again. There's okay, on one side wall it's solid. That doesn't matter, you know, it's that's reality. But I've got spaceboard on one long side, spaceboard down the end, and again, I would then always defer to you. What are the problems in the calves? Are you using a lot of straw? Are they, you know, do they have respiratory problems? And they don't. And then the other thing that I thought was quite interesting here was, I think it gets there eventually, that you know, you've got locking yokes for the calves. Well, they're getting bigger, aren't they? And again, I think that's a thing that I look at. People will say, well, it's very expensive. What's wrong with the board and the scaffolding rail? But actually, that's part of the future. There's investment for you. That it makes the cattle easier to handle, safer to handle. They get used to the yokes when they're young. You know, you can stick them in the yoke and go away. You know, the vet's coming, everybody's running around. You can stick them in there, and they're not going to melt for 20 minutes before somebody turns up. A good investment. And then the last bit was that feeding on the outside of a building is pretty good for fresh air, but again, on the farm, what they've done here, they've got a really decent overhang. It's probably 6 foot, isn't it? Something like that, Howard. Something of a six foot overhang. You need, again, that's valuable. It protects the animals, it protects the food, and whereas if it wasn't there at all, there'll be times. This one here, that's brilliant. If you didn't have the overhang, there'll be times when basically the conditions are horrible and the animals just won't eat. And this will happen also with adult dairy cattle. We see buildings that are far too open, sort of American style design. And don't worry, if you get bad winter weather, there will be less milk in the tank in the morning because the cows just don't bother to get up. So I think there's some nice detail there in the young stock building, Alan. Very good, very nice. And if it gets these open pens, for young calves, come the winter, you can stick a Heston bale 1/3 into the pen, and if it gets a bit nasty weather, they'll go and sit behind it. It's you can make a simple adjustment in that pen. Maybe gets a bit cold in certain conditions, but no, great and nice, great place to be. That was grand.
I'm going to ask Emily to jump back a little bit because I've got a question about this is the privilege of some people having my phone number. How do the multiple adjoining spawns affect the airflow, and in particular, the groups of cows in warm weather? Can you jump back to about 40 minutes, Emily? Hopefully see.
Yeah. Well, okay. The important thing is to let air in one side and out the other. So whether it's one roof or 3 roofs, as I said, you sort of go, well, if it's 3 spans, it's really important to get the air in and out. And there's bits get in the way, but I mean, and there's plenty of buildings that could not be this open because of their location. I understand that. That's where the prevailing wind direction, the west southwest, that wall needs to have as much Yorkshire board in there as you can get. There's no because the wind will come in. So in terms of answering that question, the air will. The wind will drive it, keep driving it, or drive it for 100 miles, won't it? So you can have 100 miles of roofs as long as it can keep moving and nothing get in the way. That's how it works. But you do get bits whereby, again, we should never make it too complicated. The wind. So this picture here, the wind is going to come whistling up through that gap between those 2 buildings. They'll love standing there in hot weather, and there'll be no cows anywhere near it in cold weather. It's kind of logic. It is what it is. But the air will move. If there's impediments within a building, I sometimes see people, even in a new build, they'll put a 3-meter high wall in the middle of the building, and that serves no function at all. It's just a waste of concrete.
Yes. Okay, Emily, can we jump to the next, please? You can see, I just wanted to kind of show the visualize from above here. So the south facing is to the right hand side of this picture, and then where we just were in the central area is at the end of that silver roof. So it just gives a bit of an idea of what we're actually looking at from inside. But otherwise, I think we're finally out of questions. So Mark or Tom, do you have any questions before we finish up, or are you happy?
Yes, I think we're happy. We'll let you know.
There's one bit punching in here that you can see in this picture, Alan, that was actually very important to why the cows were standing where they are. That if you like the top right corner, so those 3 roofs at the back there, 1, 2, 3. So the black cursor where you had, those 3, right? So the cows were standing really where you've got the cursor now, aren't they? Is that right, Howard? So to the left a wee bit, Alan. Yeah, there, right? Now look at the gable end, and I think that's what was. Remember we discussed it. Yes, absolutely, bang on, Alan. And it's the fact that the buildings. There's that gable end you can see in the image there. That's just a sort of a dark mass. Was completely open, isn't it? Yeah. And basically, it's acting as a scoop. That's what I reckon was going on there. That the general air is coming from over our shoulder here, coming from the west, and you're running across the top of the roofs, but there's air being, if you like, trapped by that cowl and going inside the building and giving you local increased airspeed. And there's all different ways of doing different things, but I think that's why the cows were standing down that side.
Good. Next slide, please, Emma. So we've got some take-home messages. Jamie, do you want to talk about them?
I've said too much. I always do. No, the cows, whatever the animal is, cow, calf, pig, donkey, whatever, and stock peopleship, whatever the word is, the cows are telling us all the time, whether the floors are bad or the air quality is poor or they're too hot and the water's poor. They are the best monitor, and if we can understand why they're doing what they do, there's all in the books about how much time we would like them to lie down and what is good for their feet and good for that. But actually, if you look at them on your farm, they're the guidance system. The second point is that whilst you can have too much temperature or too much moisture or too much of anything, you can't have more than too much fresh air. It is absolutely not possible, and it's such a valuable part of metabolism. That it's all good, and what they have at the farm here, at Willow Tree, is pretty damn good. But beware the predictable impact of airspeed and rain ingress, which is going to occur, absolutely guaranteed. The beast from the east, some gnarly weather in November. It will cost you if you don't add a little bit of protection, and but good ventilation helps keeps cows cool. It's all to do with inlets and outlets. So the question you came up with at the end there, Alan, from somebody else, it is inlet and outlet. So it's getting the air through the building, and it's certainly cheaper. But there will come a time. One of the other strategic monitor farms, the one in southwest Scotland, there's a story going there that they had a tremendous building. They spent a significant amount of money on fans, and we worked out at the end of last summer the payback on those fans is going to be about 3 years, which is astonishingly good. So there's different ways. Yeah.
So as far as resources, I just wanted to kind of identify there's a vast array of resources available through AHDB. The Dairy Housing Ventilation Guide is one of those things. There are actually videos of Jamie pre-recorded already on this subject and giving a little bit more detail.
Oh my God.
I know. And then so accessing ventilation, basically if you just Google AHDB and the subject you're interested in, that's the best way to find the kind of things, anything really we do. So thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you, Howard. Well, Howard's not here, but thank you, Tom and Mark, for tonight. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully everybody else has. And the video seems to have came out relatively well, so I hope you all thought that the technology was actually useful and worked well. But otherwise, I'd just like to thank you all for joining us, and have a good time. We do have an environmental baselining pilot on at the moment, so I would like you to kind of have a look at our website, and if you look for environmental baselining, we're looking for 170 farms across the country to join a carbon baselining group. So we'll be doing LiDAR and meter down cores, and basically the goal is to get an accurate representation of the amount of carbon that's being ingressed on farm, stored, sequestered on farm, rather than just what you're producing as a farmer. So we're trying to get an actual genuine picture of what the carbon picture is. If you could take the time to fill in the feedback forms as well, which will be sent out to you, and we will also be sending out this video, hopefully when it's been recorded, to everybody that joined. And otherwise, thank you very much for joining us, and have a good evening.
Right.